Welcome to today's webinar. Peg is joining us today to discuss fresh greens containers. I'm so very excited. I love this topic. Oh, good, the berries are arriving. So just going to go over a few notes while we wait for everybody to get logged in. For those of you who are new, welcome. We're so glad you're here. This is a Zoom webinar format, so it's a little bit different than the Zoom meeting, which some of you guys might be used to. We can't actually see you or talk to you during this class. So if you have questions during, you'll hit the Q&A button on your Zoom menu, type those questions in, and I'll be monitoring those during the class. We are recording today, so we'll be sending out a copy of the recording following the class, along with a coupon so that you can come and get your fresh greens at Merrifield or whatever else you want. All right, well, thank you so much, Peg. As always, I know for everybody who's joining this class, Peg really needs no introduction, but she works at our Fair Oaks store. She helps design our fresh greens. She works in the annuals house during the rest of the year, has knowledge really of everything gardening related. So thank you, Peg.
Thank you for that introduction, my dear. Okay, so it's time to deck the halls. Now, today I'm going to encourage you not just to deck the halls, but deck the outdoors also. So we'll be talking about doing larger containers with cut greens for the outside of your home, the entrance, the deck. And I want specifically to go deeply into the mechanics behind this, because if you understand the mechanics and how to go about it and how to make it stable so that the wind won't blow it away, et cetera, then if you just push beautiful greens into that, you can't lose, okay? And anybody can do that, all right? Yes, I have some techniques that I use, and I'm going to share those with you, but the mechanics are the important thing. So at first, Danny and I are going to show you a few pictures, which I hope will be inspirational. And these are things that I've often done in the past and have enjoyed. So I want to share those with you, and I will make some comments about those as we go along. But then we are going to get in deeply into how did I do that and the mechanics behind it. So let's bring up the first one, Danny. And let me say that this actually was prepared for an in-house seminar a few years back. And yes, there's an awful lot in this picture, but that's because I was trying to show an awful lot, okay? One of the first things that I want to talk about is roping. We all enjoy the roping and the fragrance that comes from it, whether it's pine roping or mixed roping or whatever. I highly recommend using your roping on the outside of your house, whether it's around your front door, or around your rails, or on your deck, or over your mailbox, because it lasts much longer when it's outside where it's cool. Inside your home, if you're deciding to do a mantle or a staircase, it's in a warm area, and you need to prepare yourself for the fact that that roping is not going to hold up as long because it's in a warm environment and it's not in water, okay? So I highly recommend this for the outside of the house and your beautiful wreath. What is in front of that actually is another thing that I highly recommend, and that is they're two living boxwood. They are in planters there. And what unfortunately you're not seeing to the side is actually a lovely bird bath that has wet oasis in it, and the branches are pushed into that oasis. So if you don't have the beautiful planter boxwood, and you have, perhaps you've got two planters there that maybe have nothing in them. And as we go along, we're going to talk about the fact that yes, you can have wet that soil, that potting soil that you have in those, have it very wet and push your branches down deeply into that soil so the wind won't blow them away. They will not last as long as if they are in water in oasis, which keeps them really moist, but they do last for several weeks, okay? So yes, you can do that. So Danny, let's go to the next picture. Okay, choosing a container for outdoor use when you're doing these branches in containers. These are terracotta, and I have had good luck with my well-fired terracotta. Mexican pottery does not work. If you have some at home, put it inside where it will not freeze because it has not been fired well. A lot of the Italian pottery is fired well and works well, okay? You are not going to be putting water into those containers. You will be using an insert, which I will show you. And you don't ever want to leave any of your terracotta or any of your containers sitting directly on soil outside. You want them on pot feet. You want them raised up with something, whether it's bricks or whatever it happens to be, okay? Because you don't want these things to freeze. So yes, you can use your terracotta. I have had very good luck with the ceramic things that are well made. And here again, they have holes in the bottom. They're not going to hold water because if they did, they would break, okay? Plastics, of course, are fine. And this actually are two lovely arrangements that could be used outside, and pretty much the contents of that is magnolia and the beautiful berries. An attractive bow can be used in them. There's blue sapphire, cypress, and Douglas fir in this also. And they are pretty good sized. I'd say that they container in all or at least 3.5 feet tall, okay? All righty, let's go to the next one, Danny. Here is another one that shows the inserts that I use here. And it is plastic and it does hold water and oasis, which again, I will show you. And you can place this inside. Let's go back to thinking of, no, we don't need to go back picture-wise, but thinking mentally, go back to whether it's terracotta or it's glazed pottery. You can sit this inside those containers, okay? And anything else that you might have that would work that holds water, okay? This is a very easy to use thing. And this is simply the greens coming down with the beautiful berries, which last for a long time, really, you know. Okay, Danny, let's keep going. Now, you can also collect things from your own garden. And I have a large garden with an awful lot that I do collect from. And I have this on my porch. And it is a metal container that won't freeze, but it has been lined with foil, heavy duty foil that will hold water. And into that I placed holly. It was beautiful Foster's holly. And I want to warn you a little bit. Everybody loves holly, and so do I. And I love it in my wreaths too. But holly doesn't hold up as long as some of the other, even if it's in water. So if you're using holly, prepare to possibly have to replace that in 2 or 3 weeks anyway. And into that, I have also used some attractive branches because it was really a bird's thing. And I actually have some little artificial birds in there. And coming back to me for just a minute, Danny, I like to tell you, we have so many things here that are so beautiful because a lot of people simply do not have the fresh greens that they want to decorate with. And so we buy those in and we condition them. And I do want to talk to you about conditioning your greens, but I want to inspire you also to look around. And even though I'm not terribly fond of that term outside the box, it is, okay? To look around and think, gee, that's attractive. What am I going to do with that? And so I grow a lot of ferns because I have a lot of shade in my garden. And one of my favorites is the ostrich fern, although if it's happy, it's very vigorous. And at this time of the year, it throws up these beautiful, beautiful brown fronds. It's not the, I'm not coming up with the right word right now. It's not the greens, okay? This comes up from it's the fruiting part of the ostrich fern. And so I thought, how can I use that? But it's beautiful and actually holds up quite well outside as well as inside. And I'm going to show, I'm doing Saturday, my first in-person class here at the Garden Center in the afternoon on arranging, just generally arranging. And I'm going to show how I use this. But I'm showing you this because using some of the ornamental grasses right now and using things like this is very attractive for Christmas time or anytime. So look around your garden or look around your friend's garden. There may be some things that inspire you to do something different. But before we go on, let's talk about conditioning your greens. They last a lot longer, whether you're putting them in water, oasis, or even if they're not in water. They last a lot longer if you cut those branches and put them into some warm water and let them sit for at least 2 or 3 hours, okay? When we get these greens in, and believe it or not, some of them come from as far as Washington State. Some of them come from North Carolina. Some are local, okay? When they come into us, we fresh cut the ends of those stems because if you don't, it doesn't absorb well. So we fresh cut the ends of those stems and put them immediately into some warm water. And so that is what conditioning the greens is. And we want to be sure that whatever you go home with is going to last as well as it possibly can. And so they've all been conditioned. If you are cutting your own greens at home, that is what I recommend also, that you make those cuts, put them in some warm water, leave them for at least a couple of hours to absorb that water, and then work with them either in the oasis water or not, okay? So let's move along after that, okay? I don't want to take up too much time. Okay, you may have tables outside on your deck or whatever and want smaller arrangements. And so this can be done in something quite simple. We actually have the little green designer bowls that can be used for this. And this is done in wet oasis. Don't ever use anything that's glass outside because it'll freeze and it'll break, okay, if you've got water in it. So be sure it's plastic or some bowl that will not crack, okay? But into that, a lower type thing that has used some beautiful magnolia, and magnolia holds up quite well, really. And then that's an opportunity to use some bows too. I believe there's some, it's not mop cypress, but that's a beautiful golden one to be used. I believe that's Cripsey, and in the gold that you see there. And there is also some holly in this. And holly, when it's in water, will last at least 3 weeks, maybe longer. But sometimes you do have to replace holly, okay? All right, Danny. let's go to the next one. Okay, I have a lot of questions because people do have window boxes, okay? Now, this particular picture that I picked out already has pansies and a couple of juniper and a couple of little upright plants in there. I can't see well enough to know exactly which ones they are, but it's attractive. But bear in mind that you can always add those to those. You can add some of the red berries to those. You can even add a few greens if you don't have, if you just have pansies. It won't hurt those. Now, that's going to be moist soil. So yes, I do have a lot of questions. If I have these containers outside, can I use the cut greens in the soil? And the answer to that is yes, you can. Be sure the soil is moist when you put them in, and chances are you won't have to water after that. My pansies and things are pretty much on their own out there in those large containers. They are large containers, okay? But, and hoses are so often frozen at this time of the year, so you can't get out there and water it anyway. And I haven't had to worry about that, okay? Generally speaking, most of the time they are fine. Okay, Danny, let's see what's coming up next. Okay. This is something that I did on my own deck 3 or 4 years ago. And we did enjoy it so much because Christmas Eve is the time when my family gathers. And I always love to have a spotlight on things like this. And actually, this was pretty easy to correct because I have the rails around the deck. And I actually used 2 pieces of rebar attached to the rails, and then wove the grapevine through it and put the lights on it, okay? And then I had some existing containers that did have soil in it, and I added some of the containers with Oasis. And yes, I did mass quite a bit of things in here and used the berries and a few red bows, but we really, really enjoyed that. And of course, I featured the nativity scene in that, okay? So this was something that I thoroughly enjoyed. Okay, Danny, let's come back to me right now, okay? And I do want to talk very much about mechanics and talk very much about using all these various branches and how do I do it that's easy for me and have it work, okay? Here is basically, okay, before I do this, the tools of the trade. I'm very, very persnickety about my tools. I like to know where they are, number one. I like to have good quality tools, number two. And I usually keep them in a little satchel, actually. And we usually sell small things. I've had this one for years, and it tucks it. It has everything in it that I need at this time of the year. So I always know where it is. And if you're looking for Christmas gifts for yourself or someone else, absolutely the best is the Felco printer for me. Okay, so I like to have these on hands, and if you take good care of them, wiping them down periodically with a good oil, and sometimes you need to get them sharpened or sharpen them yourself, but only once a year for me usually. They get a workout, okay? Velcro printers do not ever cut wire. Well, actually, there is a place down deep here where you can put a wire and cut it, but never here. You don't want to damage that. So Velcro pruners are very important. I keep on hand something that I've used and promoted for years. I promote things because I believe in them. And I believe in these things. This is Joyce Chin scissors. And it was produced by a lady many years ago who cooked a great deal and came up with these scissors. They're still the best that I've ever had. And here again, do not cut wire with these scissors. I have them everywhere I go. There's a pair in my car. There's probably a pair in my purse. And don't get on an airplane with them in your purse. You'll lose them, okay? You'll take them away. Because I did a trip recently and I was be sure that my pruners were not in my purse. And I have them in the kitchen. They cut chicken, etc. So I have those on hand. They will not cut the heavy branches that I'm working with, but they do cut the fine things. I always keep a good knife on hand. Okay, and then a little pair of actual wire cutters. Very important. All right, let's talk about Oasis. Oasis holds water and is very easy to work with. Now, here again, you may have to improvise with some of this. We have here, and I'm speaking a lot from the Fair Oaks location, largely because that's where I am right now. And that's where I influence those who work with me. And I have a great love for this. And we keep a lot of supplies on here. Plus, we do have people who, working with me, create a lot of this. They do some of it at Gainesville. They do some of it now at Merrifield, but not to the degree that we do here, okay? So we order in different things. This is a little bit bigger size of Oasis, but it's not necessary that you have this size. It's just a matter of convenience for me right now. I have, this is the little container that makes it easy for me to crank out all of these arrangements. This is what is used as an insert into another more attractive piece, regardless of whether it's terracotta or ceramic or concrete. Whatever you have, you can substitute something that holds water, and I will again talk about some of those things that are substitutions. When I put this into my container, I want it to be able to flow out of that container. So I always want my Oasis to come up above the rim of the pot, at least an inch or two. Now, this is not quite tall enough to do that. And so this is what I do. Now, this is not wet, and I work with wet Oasis. I wet it first in some lukewarm water, but it's easy for me to handle dry. So I am going to, with my little knife that always is in my container, I'm going to take half of that and put it in the bottom. Okay. And then I'm going to put this in here. Yes, I can work with it this tall, but look, it's shifting around. And I don't want it to do that. So I am going to cut 2 pieces, and I'm going to put this on either side, and it's totally stable. Totally stable, okay? Now, if you are working with the regular size Oasis, which is the one I just cut, okay? You can do the same thing because you don't have to have this mega block. This is a matter of convenience for me working on arrangements that people want to buy prepared and take home with them. You can put 2 blocks in here and cut and do the same thing and stabilize those, okay? All right, so you don't have a container that like this, okay? And you want to put it directly into a container, then this is what we do. I brought this up. It's a beautiful little piece from the greenhouse, and it's small enough for you to see what I'm doing. I couldn't, it's not as easy to work with the great big things because we're with the small environment here. Okay, so what I have done is, and this is foil from the greenhouse, so it's very strong. And you want this to hold water, remember? And so you don't want any holes in the bottom. You're going to fold that foil, and you can use the heavy duty aluminum foil from your kitchen, but you've got to remember it's got to be the wide piece that's going to fit in there because you want it to hold water. And I ease it and gently ease it down because I don't want to make any holes in it. And then actually I did one the other way to make it double strong. So you can use foil to do this. And then I placed the block, the small block. And if you've got a bigger pot, you'll need 2 of those small blocks. And I reinforced it by cutting some of the other. Okay. Now, what is another alternative? Plastic. It's got to hold water, remember? And so it needs to be either a larger piece of plastic that you can ease down inside, or it needs to be a couple of plastic bags eased down inside. You're not going to see these things once you've got your greens inside. It's going to be fine. Okay. Now, stepping aside, hopefully we'll have some time for a few questions that if I haven't been clear with this, it will be okay. Let me bring over, and I think I can do this, Danny. I think I'll be fine. I don't know if it's going to show well. Okay. Okay, it's bigger than me. All right. This is pretty much finished, and it has some very attractive greens of your choice. And I want to show you with this container that I just had up here, how I cut and how I push these greens inside. This one is a very mixed container. It's ready for the final touch, which can either be the berries, a bow, or the beautiful branches that we often put in the top of it. So this I wanted to bring up close because it has so much interest. It has so much interest in texture because there's a change in texture. There's a change in the form and the shape of these things using the magnolia, but also in the color of the evergreens. This one is the blue green, and we also have that has a touch of yellow. I don't think I put yellow in any of these, but this is a traditional mixed greens arrangement. Okay. Now, I'm going to sit that there. All right. I have brought up a couple of others. I don't want to trip over something I've got here. Okay, here we go. Let's bring this one up. This could be different. Okay. And here, if you can see, I'm going to dump water if I turn it too much. That you can see the oasis there, because this is just the beginning. And so this is another way to style this, where you've got the greens flowing out of it. And then you can add just the little magnolia or none. You can just put beautiful berries in there. See, this is going to come up higher and I can't put it. But now you can just do one green if you want to, and then tuck these berries deep down inside. So that is another way to utilize the greens in a different fashion. Over to the side here. We'll bring it over in just a minute, Danny. But let's come back to this container. And remember, when I'm arranging, whether it's inside or outside, I usually like to have the foam come up above the container because I want to be able to put something in sideways if possible. Okay. But let's begin with how do I cut these things? Because when you come in here you're going to see large branches. And how you choose to cut those is important. And where do you begin? Okay, you can see all the little branches that's coming out from this. I use my Velcros, and I'm going to cut some of the longer pieces because I want this to be a mixed arrangement. I'm going to cut some of those longer pieces. Now, this is how I do it so that my stems don't fight with each other. If I push it in like this, then I'm going to have trouble getting this one in. So I don't believe in manipulating, okay? People manipulate people. I don't like to do that, but I can manipulate these branches. I can use the warmth of my hand to have them form. This one's a little easier, but you don't want to leave the branches on. And as we go along, you'll understand with some of the others better, because you don't want to put too much into this oasis. I've bent this slightly, and I'm going to place these first branches deep down into the sides, into the oasis. When you're doing this for the outside particularly, and even for the inside, you want to be sure those branches are pushed deeply into that container, because you don't outside want the wind to blow them away. All right, so I'm going to start with these things. Now, I wear gloves most of the time when I am out working, because I work with a lot of this and I would destroy my hands. So I usually use the little plastic gloves on top of my fox gloves, okay? So this goes in the edges into that container. More of this comes off, gently manipulated, deep down inside, okay? Now, obviously, I'm not going to take your time to do all of this, but that's one of the first things that I do, is push that all around the edges so that it flows over somewhat in the container. So let's pretend that I've come all the way around with this. Because I'm going to do a mixed container similar to the one that is over here, I am now going to decide how tall do I want this to be. And I've got a beautiful branch here that I took the bottom pieces off to use in this. And so now I'm going to cut this one. And I'm going to remove, but save those little pieces on the bottom, because they really come in handy. And I'll tell you again as we go along how to use those little branches. Okay, so here again, I'll sometimes manipulate that a little bit too. This may be too tall for the camera, but forgive me. Pushing it all the way very, very firmly down into that. Because remember, we're outside. I need more than one, obviously. And so I'm going to pick up another one of these large branches. And then I'm going to cut that one. And insert that like so. Firmly inside of there. Now, I'm not going to finish all of that either, but I am going to sit it to the side so you can hopefully see my face. Okay. Now, what am I going to do with all these little short pieces? Number one, I may not be able to use every short piece because some of them are shorter than others. But before I go any further, I am going to use just a few of these pieces as filler for this. So I'm going to use some short pieces in here. And even these little pieces are wonderful and push not in like this, because that interferes with stems going in, but down like so, okay? and then another one down like so. And I'll use more of those. Okay, I'm going to pick up now another beautiful, beautiful piece of noble fur. And this is what it looks like when you bring it in. And obviously, I'm going to be sure that I save the top part of this because I want to use it in there. And then I'm going, and this is a little more difficult to cut. I have some heavier pruners sometimes to use for this, but I'm going to remove and save these little pieces, and you want to remove it close to the stem. This is the one that you really have to trim all those little guys off so that you can push it in firmly, okay? Now you've got a bare stem to push into that oasis so you don't tear up your oasis. And don't feel that you have to fill this thing full, because you'll tear up that oasis and you want to do that, okay? So now I'm going to push this deep down inside because this is a mixed container. I would, to finish this off, put at least one more over in this direction. But what in the meantime am I going to do with this? I'm going to use all of this as filler. And that is where these little pieces that are in here don't need to be thrown away. You want to use everything you've got. And they're great for filler. Just pushing the tiny pieces straight down inside, okay? Or save them because you may want to do some tiny little arrangement for inside, okay? But I'm going to use these pieces, cutting it again very carefully. It's usually I work with both of these things because these joist chins are easier to trim those ends with, okay? And these will then be used as filler also. But this is why you don't want to put your stems in crosswise, because that impedes being able to put these down straight into the container. Obviously, I am not going to be able to do the total finished thing here, but I'm just wanting to tell you how I do these, okay? Pushing it very, very firmly straight down inside. Okay. Then I'm going to bring up another one that I just love. And I like the color pickup of the noble fur with the blue sapphire. It's very attractive. And I'm going to use this to give me some tall line. And I'm going to again trim off, even with the stem, that blue sapphire. And then this is going to be really nice as a tall emphasis in this. It's beautiful, beautiful stuff to work with, you know. Here again, making a cut and saving anything. Don't throw it away. It's going to be very, very useful. You'd want 2 or 3 of those in there. And then some of the smaller pieces, even this cut piece is going to be attractive because now here again, what I'm going to do, not straight in like this, but straight down to add a little of that to the edge, okay? Here again, I'm going to add more of this when I'm finishing this off. I can't possibly take the time to totally finish it for you at this moment. You can then use beautiful magnolia, and it's not inexpensive, okay? So you want to take really advantage of it. I've got a big piece here. I'm going to cut this. It just so happens that this is attractive, even though I've got a cut in there, it's going to be hidden. Now, I'm going to remove some of these bottom leaves, and I'm not going to throw those leaves away. okay? Because I will tell you how you can use them. I don't want it to be quite that long, so I'm going to cut this again. This is a tough one, okay? And I'm going to put, Danny, I should have you do this. Put this down inside of there. Now, I love it that the brown backing is showing in this. And obviously I won't, again, I'm going to save those leaves for a repeat over here. Okay, so there we're progressing as to how I created that mixed arrangement. Now, what am I going to do with these leaves? I'm going to save them because in small arrangements, they are fantastic. And you can use them in Oasis. And I'll cover this very carefully in the class on smaller arrangements on Saturday. It has a knobby stem, so I always cut that, but it can be eased into even small containers, and it can be used both ways, okay? Very, very attractive. Excuse me. So don't throw your stuff away. Save it, but put it in water, okay? So after you have done that, you can add some of these beautiful, beautiful berries, winterberry holly. And I love using all of this stuff, and it holds up really quite well. I like it to be in moisture. It seems to hold up better. But here again, I'm going to cut that flush and then push this deeply, deeply down inside that container. Okay. Now I realize that it's a little difficult for you to see some of this. Okay. But that essentially, did that come through okay, Danny? Okay. He's my lookout guy. Okay. I say, Danny, you tell me if this is not working. Okay. All right. How do you decorate from there?
You scoot to the side, you can see the full thing.
Which way, Danny?
Either way, either way.
Well, we'll.
Now they can, no, I'm saying if you scoot to the side, they can see. the full
Oh,
thing.
if I'm scooped to the
Yeah.
side.
So it's the
Okay.
Finished product.
All right, well, we'll shift it down. Okay. Well, it's not totally finished, but you see, you don't have to have a great deal. Now, I love this little container. I found it in the greenhouse. And I didn't even realize until the moment, but it picks up the blue of that balsam. Incredible. Noble fir, I beg your pardon. Isn't that pretty? Like it. That can be used inside too. The size of this, okay. This is a little on the small side to be using outside. I chose the smaller size so that you could see it better up here, okay. Now, I love to use a lot of natural materials, but before I do that, maybe I see something I've forgotten to tell you about. I love to use a lot of natural materials. When I told you to condition your greens first, and the fact that we do condition the greens when they come here, this Prolong is a little liquid that you add to the water when you buy your fresh Christmas trees. But it's also useful to put into the water that you're conditioning your greens with. It helps to cut down on the bacteria or all the little stuff that might go on inside that water. Okay, so follow your directions here on the bottle as to how much you put into the lukewarm water that you condition your flowers with. And do be sure to keep your fresh Christmas trees inside, hydrated, and water in the container, and continue to add Prolong to that. So this is a valuable little product to know about. I love to decorate with cones. Maybe some of this came about, I grew up in the Deep South, and we had the longleaf pines and the really big pine cones, and I loved using those. And so I have an affinity for the use of pine cones in fall and Christmas and winter decorations too. But you have to make them stand up. And I've got different sizes here. And I have attached a heavy duty wire. There are several different weights of wire, and knowing the differences is important. This particular wire is a heavy gauge wire, and it's 18 gauge. And I'll show you how to wire it. But this is what I love to do with the arrangements, is to be able to go back into here and accent. And I love the fact that you've got the contrast of that with the pine cone, okay? And you may need several of those as an accent. It's a very natural look. Okay, let's put in several of these. And you can also use a bow, which I did not bring up here right now. Okay. But it's really very attractive. And there's several different sizes of cones. The smaller ones I love to do in groupings in the containers that I do inside because the scale is better. I like the bigger ones for the outside because of the scale, okay? So, and they're the white pine cones. We have a lot of these in our own area. And sometimes they're have a lot of sap, if they're fresh, have a lot of sap on them. So I try to work with gloves when I'm using them. Okay, this is the 18 gauge wire. And I want this to be as stable as possible when I'm pushing it into that arrangement. I have a certain amount of this protrude from the bottom of this cone because I've got to wire it off. I go around and to this, I overlap and really twist firmly. There we go. Now it stands up. Love these too. And you can use those as a contrast. Here again, we have the contrast of this beautiful foliage. Now we've got the contrast of the pine cones, okay? And how I wire these, and I'd love to use them in groupings. And you can hand spray them with the clear glaze if you want to, but I love them natural. Okay, let's wire one of the smaller ones, and hopefully that you're able to see what I'm doing. I'm going to leave a portion of that outside because I'm going to connect with it and weave through those little leaves on the cone, okay, little scales on the cone. And you see what I've got there? Now I'm twisting that very firmly. Pulling it down. So that's how I do that. Okay. All right, I will take a few questions. Hopefully I've covered most of the basic territory for this, Sally.
Definitely. Yeah, it was great. And we have some questions that have come in. Just warning everybody, if we don't get to your question today, like please feel free to submit it. If we don't get to it, you can follow up by email. Just hit reply on your confirmation email that goes to me. I will share your questions with Peg. Or if you think of questions after we don't get to them today, we're happy to follow up after the class. Okay, so the first question is from Gail. She has deciduous hollies. Last year, she wanted to use the berries for her arrangements, but the birds came through and ate all of her winter berries. So she cut some branches this year, and so she has some winter berries, but then the birds came through and ate all of her American holly berries. So she wants to know if there's any way that you keep the birds from eating these berries.
The only way would be to net them. And you know, that's really strange because here I live near Tyson's Corner, actually. And they don't eat my winter berries early. And the amazing thing is with my American holly, they don't eat those right now. I sometimes feel that the Lord created all of these various plants to come to be interesting at a certain time so that these birds would have them at different times. Because it's only in January that I'll get a flock of robins or a passing through, but usually robins that come in and within one day go right through all of the American holly. But up until then, even the Foster's holly don't have a problem. But the only thing you could do would be to net them. And we have bird netting or deer netting, which is a little bit of an aggravation because if it gets stuck in the branches, it's a little hard to get off, you know. No, there's not. There's
Nothing to do. Yeah.
You can certainly cut them ahead and bring them where they're protected, but put them in a little bit of water, not to submerge the berries ever, but to put the base in a little bit of water. Okay.
Okay. All right. Next question is to clarify. So when you're doing your pot with your greens, you put the foil in to keep the water from seeping out, but you had mentioned the importance of having a drainage hole in the pot. So is the drainage hole for planting and
No, there's no, well, there is some importance in having a drainage hole in the pot. If you put a ceramic container or you put any one of those and put water directly into that and it freezes, it's going to pop that pot. Okay. So it's important that it does drain, that those pots drain. The only thing you don't have to worry about outside would be plastic.
okay.
That probably won't pop. Now, sometimes it might, but my inserts have never popped, okay? Or a smaller plastic that holds water.
Yes.
You want to hold water in this. This is why I said drainage, yes, because I do not want my ceramic pots to crack. That's why I line it with something that holds the water and won't pop the pot.
Got it. Okay.
I want it to hold the water, whether you're using an insert or you're using foil or you're using plastic, you want it to hold the water, okay? And you need to periodically, even though it's outside, and once it freezes, don't worry about it. It's fine. I have my customers, and for me, they'll last through January. If it's warm and it's drying out, you need to add some lukewarm water to that every 4 or 5 days. Okay.
Okay. So we just had a question come in. I'll be sending the recording out tomorrow. So if anybody wants to watch this again, I think that answers that question. Okay. Next question. Can you use in fresh greens arrangements, can you use rosemary or lavender? Would either of those work?
In fresh greens inside, because they're smaller, I'm using big stuff outside. Okay.
Okay. So recommended maybe for indoors.
Inside would be fantastic. It's
Okay.
lovely and it's so fragrant. This is one thing that I didn't emphasize is the beauty of fragrance with all of these evergreens. That's one of the things that we hear most when people come into the garden center and go out into the annual's house where we normally have our fresh cut greens and stuff, is the fragrance. It's wonderful.
Yeah, I love the smell of the annual's house when all the greens are in. It's like walking through Christmas.
It is. Yes.
Yeah, it's so great. Okay, next question, and this might be our last one, is okay. My outdoor containers are cast aluminum and black. They're 11 inches by 22 inches, so they're a rectangle. Do you have any tips for arranging greens in a rectangular shape? She's using birch branches.
Okay, and birch branches are beautiful and they're used. It's just if they're really big, they take up a lot of space. Okay, does that, in spite of the fact that that holds water, okay, possibly, I still would line it with heavy foil, okay, or plastic that holds water. And then you can put some Oasis, you can put your heavier stems into that, the branches as you wish, and put the Oasis among it, and then arrange away. A rectangle is just as beautiful as a round. Okay, let me tell you this. That's a very good question, because when you're raising this, and sometimes you have to use your imagination as to how you want to do this. Having the Oasis anchors stuff, and it keeps it moist as long as you add some water to it if it is drying out. But if you have a situation like this that is deep, and you don't want to spend a fortune in Oasis, which is not necessary, you can put something on the bottom and even around those stems. Let's say that you have water bottles, okay, so big. Fill those with water. Why do I say fill it with water? Because if you put them in there without water, they're going to squish, you know, and sink. So fill some of those with water and use those as filler underneath or around in this situation, and they'll help to hold some of those birch branches in place too. Or any other thing that can raise this. Never use glass. Don't fill a glass jug and put it in there, it'll break, okay? But certainly those water bottles would be fantastic. You put it in the bottom, even if you put in lieu of, to save on Oasis, you could put a couple of those bottles, the small ones, down inside, but fill them with water first, otherwise they'll collapse. Put those inside and then put your Oasis in. If it's this rectangle, you can put some of those in the bottom and then tuck enough Oasis inside to hold your branches. Does that seem clear?
Yeah, I think that's like a great idea.
Okay.
Okay, next question, and our last one, and the last one I think we're gonna have time for. So do you have any tips for using live boxwood?
Any tips for
With
using
cuttings?
live boxwood's fantastic. I just didn't have any with me up here today, okay? There's so many things to choose from. Live boxwood it holds up beautifully. And I actually, in Saturday afternoon's class, which is more indoor arranging, I've used a lot of boxwood. Boxwood is fantastic to make kissing balls with. And we have the round foam balls for that purpose, okay? You can use long pieces. If you've got the boxwood in your garden, judiciously pruning at this time of the year is very good, because boxwood loves to be opened up some. If you're doing that and you have large boxwood, pull it back and go down inside, deep inside, and make a cut, depending upon how big it is, okay? Because that opens up air and space for this. Boxwood like that, okay? A whole lot better than they like to be sheared, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
Or,
we actually have a video on that. If anybody would like an excuse to go prune their boxwood, send me an email and I can send you the tutorial. So you
okay,
can
that's fine, because it's not going to hurt your boxwood at this time of the year. You may have been told, don't do your pruning in like September and October, because if we get a warm spell, it may want to throw out some new growth. But that's not going to happen now because it's cold, okay? So it's safe to judiciously prune your boxwood at this time of year. Okay.
Oh, great. All right. Okay. Yes, I see the email about the boxwood instructions. I will do that. Oh, thank you. We're getting some nice notes, Peg. Thank you, guys. All right, we're out of time. If you all think of anything you have questions about, please feel free to send us an email. come and visit the Fair Oaks store. The annuals house is beautiful this time of year. I just love seeing all the fresh greens. So it's a great time of year to go see the garden center and get some festive activities going. Peg, thank you so much. If anybody hasn't signed up for the Saturday class and you're interested in going, go on our website. It's at the Fair Oaks store. Peg, do you want to say anything about that before we?
No, just will be indoor arranging, but I want to ask you a question quickly because you know I'm not good oriented computer wise, et cetera, et cetera. You do post these at some point on.
Yeah, so we send out the recording tomorrow, but the video recording, all of the videos are hosted on our YouTube channel. So for those of you who aren't familiar, we do have a YouTube channel and all of Peg's classes are actually posted there. Most of our instructor classes are posted there. So I can send anybody who's interested in seeing the whole channel a link, and then you'll get a link to Peg's class tomorrow specifically. So I'll be sending that out. Yep.
Thank you.
All
Thank
right,
you
that's
for
great. Yeah.
watching.
Visit our website. Come see Peg on Saturday. She's going to be talking about indoor arrangements. And I think that's about it for announcements. So thank you guys so much. And Peg, have a great afternoon. And everybody else, have a wonderful afternoon. Happy December. Bye.
Stay well.